Hi, I'm MJ Preston. This is Thriller and Suspense, the podcast. Young adult. You also write short horror. You wrote a,
hmm
a novel called The Belize Experiment, which was kind of
hmm
a playoff
Experience.
of an actual experience that you had in Belize.
Not
And
me, co-workers, but
oh, okay. And okay, so I'm just going to run off some of your titles here. Uh, Belize Experience, Christmas Incorporated, which I purchased, and I forgot to send to my granddaughter, but she's a little bit small, anyways. The
hmm
homemade Halloween costume dilemma, and these were
hmm
written and illustrated by your partner Ian Etheridge, correct?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and
Sorry, I'm just getting ready. Yeah.
oh,
But yeah, Ian illustrated and helped with some of the creative process, and
right.
yeah, we collaborated on those two. The Belize Experience was he did the cover for, but the rest of it was me. And then the short stories were just you know, little things that popped out of my head to get me started on this trail.
Geez, I only jotted a few down, but you were in Dead Heat Till Death,
hmm
The Little Book of Cursed Dolls. Now, did
Yeah.
that one I got a kick out of. So okay, so first we're going to break this down a little bit by little bit. Okay, so
hmm
the Belize experience, very. Tell me a little bit about that. That's what I want to know about.
Okay. Well, basically, it's three coworkers in desperate need of a vacation scam their company into paying for their trip, and yeah, bad things happen while they're there. And then there's,
Okay.
hopefully a an unforeseen twist at the end, and it was more fun than anything.
What I find interesting with you is that you're kind of all over the map when it comes to genre, and and that's not a slight because I'm kind of a genre crosser too. I like to play in different
hmm
areas. Um, so you go from that uh, to Christmas Incorporated and the homemade Halloween costume dilemma. And before I ask you the question, I'm going to ask you. And Ian did he also did the illustration for the Christmas Incorporated. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Well, we couldn't get him on, but because I think he thinks he's the drummer of Rush, where he doesn't like dealing with the public. I'm just busted chops, but I just want to
Hmm.
say his artwork is absolutely stunningly beautiful.
Oh, he's
I read
amazingly
Christmas
talented. Yes.
Incorporated. I really enjoyed it, and I bought it. I bought it based on the cover because I thought the cover was absolutely beautiful, and
hmm
I have an eye for that. And the story's great too, by the way. I haven't read the homemade Halloween costume dilemma, but I could see that getting added to my granddaughter's list as well. But how do you go from something like the Belize experience to the horror that you write and find your way into these two young adult books, which I'm just going to tell anybody that's listening, these are beautiful books. These are books you want to buy and give to your kids or your
Thank you.
grandkids. I mean that sincerely. They're very well laid out, very professionally done, and the stories are very good, great for kids. Better than a phone.
Well, yeah, for
But
sure.
anyways, the question
It
is,
took a lot of
how
work.
do you jump from that to that?
It wasn't. It wasn't a big jump, really. Uh,
No?
my daughter, my youngest daughter, growing up, we spent a lot of time watching spooky movies together, and I just realized how much I love horror and how much I love Halloween and kids going door to door. So I got talking to Ian. It's like I've got an idea. I originally started as an ABC book,
Right.
and it just morphed into this whole what would these kids do if they needed a costume and had no money? So yeah, it's just a way to introduce little ones into the fun of Halloween and costume making and monsters in general.
Those two kids in that book are your kids, or that they're based on your
Well,
kids,
based loosely on, yes.
right?
Tiffany, the oldest, well, not to age myself, but she'll be 29 this year, and Madison, my youngest, is 19 now, And yeah, it's just based on them as characters. And yeah, some of the outside, like it's all set in this area of Iqaluit. And yeah, it all came together bit by bit between the two of us talking about horror and monsters and how we want to put this book together.
Like I said, I haven't looked at the second book, but I'm going to probably order it now. But Christmas Incorporated, like I said, it's a beautiful little book, and I mean, it's not a big read, but it's a great book. It kind of harkens back. Now I'm a lot older for young boys, right? Like they had a book called Soup and Me, and they were comical kind of books, very similar in the vein of what you've written. They're a little bit thicker, but they're great because it's not all illustration, right, for a kid. And so they have to listen to what you're saying. And I think well, you know as well as I do, what goes on in your head is even better than the picture, but you got all this beautiful art throughout it to show them. And let's talk about what kind of horror that you write. Is it speculative? Is it what?
It's like you said earlier, it's all over the place. I got one story about a cursed doll that influences you into killing people. But then I got another story of just a guy living in town who runs into a local Inuit legend. It's, go from monsters to serial killers to just a little bit of everything.
Now, do you find that, like, I guess in a story, short stories have always been a tough one for me. I've written quite a few, but I'm there was a point when I got into this gig that I thought, if I could only get past 100 pages, right? Because that seemed like a lot of writing. Yeah. And now it's like, if I could only get under 500 pages, right? So for a short story, the condensed version, you're basically just, giving a flash of fiction to somebody or a piece of fiction, 13 pages, whatever. Do you have trouble with that? Or personally, me, as a matter of fact, the last short story that I submitted that got accepted was closer to a short novella than it was a short story. So how are you with that? Do you find it any of the restraints of moving back and forth between something long and something short? Or
well, I find the longer stuff, obviously takes longer. I usually get the general idea for a short story, go with it, see where it develops. With the homemade Halloween costume dilemma, it's a children's picture book, so it's only 32 pages, and it's more of their conversation as opposed to a story. Whereas Christmas Incorporated, something around 11,000, 12,000 words.
Yeah.
So it was a bit more, and there's so many drafts. The Belize Experience is like 29,000 words.
Right.
And that took a lot longer. And again, many, many drafts to go over that and get it where I want it. So
are you working on anything longer at this point, or are you looking at another novel? Or
I have a couple other novellas, more adult than children. Right. And they're in various stages of development. I've got rough drafts of 3 novellas now, roughly around 20,000 apiece, 20,000 words apiece.
So could you do me a favor and could you tell people where you are in the world right now? Because first of all, and the reason I'm asking you to do it is because I don't want to mispronounce it because I'll probably screw up the word.
Well, I'll probably screw it up too.
So I'll put you on the spot.
But thanks. Yeah. I'm in Iqaluit, Nunavut, Great White North. Capital city of Nunavut, and I've been here 23 years now.
We have a mutual friend too, Paul Murphy, correct? Yeah. Is Paul close to you, or he's got to be farther away from you then?
He used to live in town in the city here, but he moved away to the Kitikmeot region to Kugluktuk, which is over in the west, so more above you. Yeah.
Right. Okay, well, we won't wander off on that too much, but I did want to mention that's basically how we met, was through Paul, right?
Yeah, because he said I got to read your books, and I'm glad I did, because The Highwayman, holy crap!
Well, thank you.
Still waiting for book 3, by the way.
Oh, I don't even want to go there. Well, actually, I'm almost wrapped up on one of the drafts. So I'll put it to you that way. But it's coming. I mean, I'm on the home stretch with it. So hopefully soon. Yeah. So now you guys are, what do you got? Like 4 hours of daylight up there now? Now that winter's coming on to you guys, or?
Sun comes up around 8:30, and usually gone around 2:30, 3 o'clock. But they're getting shorter.
Got to be similar to when I went up to Acadie and all that too. Same thing. The winds are so bad. You know, I remember going one time when we were coming out of the mine, and I blew a sensor in my rig. And so we had to get the truck just died on, and it died on the same road that I mentioned in Acadia, which was Misery Road. And that's why it's called Misery Road, because the winds were about 70 kilometers an hour. And I think it was, it was like 60 below out. It was just brutal. And we were out there trying to get this thing going again, because you got like 15 minutes in a truck in that kind of environment, and the oil starts turning into roofing tar, right? You'll never get it going. So we were out there, and I remember going inside, and I felt like my fingers, like if I went like that, they would have just popped off. They felt like just twigs, eh? And it took, I still got frostbite in my hands from those days. And that's probably 10 years ago, at least. So I get it.
That's January, February here. So gets -50, -60 with wind chill, and it's pretty bad. Great for writing.
What do you got up your sleeve? What are you working on now? What's your work in progress? You don't have to tell me
You got a sci-fi thriller / horror set in a slightly near future, basically killer robot sort of thing.
Right.
I've got like a paranormal detective story, kind of like Lovecraftian / Sherlock Holmes sort of thing. And
so for listeners to understand that, okay, so you got some stories laying around. You said novellas too, you're working, but how do you market yourself out when you get something? Like I know how you do, but I know how you're doing it on Facebook, right? Do you use Facebook?
Yeah, I use Facebook, and
yeah. So you go to
I haven't learned the marketing thing.
Okay, but do you go to open call to sell your work?
Oh, for short stories, I'll pick up stuff there. I see open calls there, or there's the Books of Horror community Facebook group. Gotten a few open calls there. Again, for short stories, but for novellas, it's just self-published, and I'm not very good at the marketing.
Well, that's the fault of every indie author, right? I mean, look at me. I've been writing for quite a while, and I mean, I did get a publishing contract, but the marketing, I mean, in all honesty, my son is helping me with the marketing. I've done even interviews, and I'll tell you something. I don't want to dishearten anybody listening, because what you're doing, James, is the right thing. Is you're writing your stories, you're selling your stories. Sooner or later, you may go through the rest of your life and only write short stories and novellas and small books, right? Whatever you like to do, or you may take on a bigger project. But the cool thing is that you've got the resources out there now where you can actually do that. And it's not an old boys club anymore, where, when I first tried to break into this business, and I'm going back to the 80s. I mean, I don't know if you heard Craig Spector's story about how they sold the light at the end, but he basically had to sneak it into the publisher, because if they didn't know you, right? Nobody wants to touch you. The nice thing about this market is that you can get out there and kind of build a name for yourself, even, through that. The marketing end of it is really hard. And like I said, not to discourage anybody, but I mean, I've done piles of interviews. I've been on LA radio. I've been on CBC. I've been on, Toronto. I've been on LA Talk Radio, and it's still almost not enough. It's a weird thing, but the old saying about writing where they say it's, 70% talent and 20% this, and about 10% is luck. And part of it is, I mean, you see and the other thing we have to face is is that we have an oversaturated market. There's plenty of people writing books now that weren't writing books before. And that's not to bash anybody, because that's where you find these talents, you know.
Hmm.
And sometimes people rise above, but it makes it more difficult to market your stuff when there's, you know, when you're competing with, like, my buddy Jim Steele there, my mentor, he said to me when I published The Equinox, he said, understand this. He said, walk into a giant bookstore and look at all those books, and you're one
Hmm.
book, and you're in competition with all those guys. And then walk into a virtual bookstore like Amazon, where how many books does Amazon got? Millions and
Too
millions of
many.
books. Yeah.
Hmm.
And there are little things that I'm learning now, is that if you don't have over 50 reviews, you're not climbing up into the next tier to get noticed. This is what I've been told. But anyways, it is
Well,
a
getting
struggle.
reviews is
I get
tough.
it, you know, and I'm still learning too. I mean, my son Corey is helping me with the marketing, and it's it's showing results, right? But it's still an uphill battle. And I've got 4 books, man.
Hmm.
And I, like, you know, I know people in the business now a little bit. I'm not saying that I'm, you know, oh, look at me, I'm going to rest on my laurels. But I know people in the business. I know people in the horror community. I know people, you know, but when it comes right down to it, we're all just writers, okay?
Again, not used to self promotion and bragging myself up, but the live events like craft fairs locally and whatnot, where me and Ian get together and promote our 2 books, well received. Our fan base is fiercely loyal. Just
Yeah.
can't seem to get the word out to spread as much as we'd like.
Well, this will
Because
be
a lot of
this
work went
this.
into them, a lot of heart, which you can
Oh, I
tell just
know.
by
Well,
reading it. So,
I know, man. I know it's a grind. You know, I kind of blogged about it the other night. And when Highwayman came out, I got 2 bad reviews right out the gate, right? And we were excited. It
hmm.
was like, oh, here we go, man. Right. You know, we're giving it away for free to these people. And they did honest reviews. That's how they felt, whatever, right? But you
Hmm.
feel like, oh, look, this is awesome. And all of a sudden, you know, somebody throws you a bad review, and you know, you're like, Jesus, did I do all this for nothing? There is a huge amount of work that goes into a written piece. There really is. Into a book,
Hmm.
into a children's book, even into a short story. A short story you can let go if it gets killed, or if it's not good enough, you can retool it. But you know,
Hmm.
a longer piece, it's really hard. And you know, you do put your heart and soul out. And what a lot of people don't realize is you're putting your you're putting your heart out on the line too, for people to stomp on, right? Because this is what you do. You're like the little kid that runs up and goes, "Hey mom, look at what I made," right? And then she stomps all over it. I used to be extremely nervous about getting up in front of crowds. And the military kind of
Hmm.
cured me of that, because when I became an NCO, I had to instruct. And at one point I had to give a presentation for an entire regiment. You know, I was still nervous, but it scared that out of me a little bit. But you really, when you write something and you put it out there, or even if somebody writes a piece of music and they put it out there, it you're taking a real leap of faith, and you are hopeful, and there's nothing wrong with saying, yeah, you do want people to read it, and make it a couple of bucks wouldn't be bad either, would it?
Oh, well, I would not say no to that. That's right. Like, I wouldn't mind that at all. But yeah, I agree with that 100%. Like, I write the stories, but I'm also afraid to have anybody read them because they come from inside. They're going to just totally judge me on the stories alone. Like, what kind of messed up guy writes this, which I've heard a couple of times, and
Right.
stuff like that. Yeah.
Have you read any of Duncan Ralston's stuff? Do you know who
Oh
Duncan
yeah, I
Ralston
love
is?
him. Yeah.
Oh, really? So do you do
Yeah.
extreme horror? Yeah.
Uh, I dabble in it. I don't write it, but I've definitely read my fair share of it. Yes.
Well, yeah, Duncan's a super nice
Him
guy.
and oh yeah, and I believe he's from Toronto as well. So
Yeah, he is. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to
yeah,
drag his ass on here one of these days for a podcast. Yeah, and
that'd
his
be
book
great.
that just came out is just exploding on the net, right?
With
But
Puzzle House, yeah, it was a great book.
No, not Puzzle House, the new one. He did a book called Womb. I think that's his best-selling book ever. And I
Yes,
downloaded that. And that's really extreme. And
very
I
disturbing.
I went right beginning to end. It's a bit much for me, but I can tell, I mean, there are people that just wouldn't be their cup of tea. But Duncan
Mhm.
Ralston knows how to write, man. He knows how to write. I mean,
Yes.
that's what dragged me all the way through all that disgusting, gross stuff, right? But the thing was, he knows how to write, and there's a market out there for that kind of horror, just like there's a
Oh,
market
there
for
is.
anything. But I didn't know you did that. Yeah, that's kind of cool. So, do you
Yeah, I've
who are your favorite who are your favorite authors?
oh, favorites. There's just so many.
Yeah, okay.
All-time favorite, I would have to
Influences?
say, well, John W. Campbell, because he
Oh
wrote
yeah,
Who Goes There, which is
yeah.
my favorite movie ever, is The Thing, based off that. I'm reading a great series, the Reality Bleed series by J.Z. Foster.
Okay.
It's basically Doom meets Lovecraft, and it's great. It's set on Mars. It comes to Earth, and a bit of sci-fi, a lot of horror, well written. I'm also just again, there's so many. Like you said, Ralston, love his Ghostland series. Even got my wife reading it.
Yeah,
Mike
I mean,
Duke. There's James Newman. There's so many.
it just what you said about Ralston though. When I went and read Womb, so I went and looked at the reviews on it, and he's got like, what's he got? He's got like 40,000 reviews, some crazy number. Anyways,
Something like that. Yeah.
it's insane the amount of reviews. Not all of them are good reviews, by the way, but at this point, it doesn't matter.
Oh,
But the
exactly.
best review he got was a woman's wrote, "This is the most effing disgusting book I have ever read." And
Which
that's
is
all
why
she
I
wrote.
picked it up in the
And she
first
gave him
place.
1 star. And I said, that woman just sold you about 1,000 books, buddy. Like just on
Well,
that review.
sold it to me, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, like I said, he's a good writer, and he's a super nice guy. I've interacted with him a few times and talked and stuff like that. Um, it's a weird community. Like I said, I mean, you can be talking with F. Paul Wilson one day and just talking to another guy's just down in the trenches with you the next day, right? It's slugging her out,
Hmm.
trying to get your work out. So it, but that is what I like about the writing community. I'm not a big fan of being a part of clubs or groups. Well, look, I
Mm.
have a group. What in the sense that because I don't have enough time to do that, but I'm also not a I don't know. I'm not a bit I don't run around looking for awards for my work either. Like some people, oh well, I get to
Hmm.
get a Bram Stoker in the horror community. That's a huge deal to get a Bram Stoker. I know that, right? But
Oh, it is. Yeah.
it but I don't want to sound snooty or anything like that, but I really at this point in my life, because I'm 58, I don't give a crap anymore. I just want to write books and want people to read them. That's all I care about. So
I'm there myself, but I'm not going to say no to a Stoker Award either. So,
what if it was stolen?
as long as my name's on it, I'm happy.
No, I'm not. I'm not. Listen, I was a member in good standing of the Horror Writers Association for probably four or 5 years. I'm not bashing them; they're good people over there. I mean,
Hmm.
guys like Gord Rollo, Gene O'Neill. I think of there's a lot of people over there, really decent people. I just didn't have time to maintain it, so I moved on. And
Yeah.
my focus is getting my work out there. I don't. But they do offer some great things there. I mean, if you're a member there, there's mentorship, there's all sorts of neat stuff that you can do.
Oh, yeah.
I
There's
just
some
don't
good
have time for
resources that
it.
I haven't had time to take up on myself, but a
Have you
lot of good
joined?
people, good connections. I've joined.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you
I'm a
did.
member of the Atlantic Canada chapter. So even though
Oh,
I live
okay.
way up here,
I
they
didn't
don't
know
have
there
a
was an
chapter here
Atlantic
yet.
Canada chapter.
It's new within the last, what, 6, 7 months?
Oh yeah, okay.
Mhm.
That's the you know what one of the coolest things that I did was go to a con. So, and that's what I would suggest that you and Ian do one time. Just, tie them up, throw them in the trunk or
Oh, would
whatever,
love to.
airplane, and go down to a con. I went, and I've only been to one con. I went to the Anthocon in New Hampshire, and I met a bunch of writers that I
Hmm.
knew out there. But Gord Rollo, I asked him before I went, I said, is this worth it? Because there's a little bit of an investment. And he said, you know what? You're not going to sell a pile of books at a con, but where you're going to network with some of the coolest people. And when you're with them,
Mm.
it's almost like getting, you get your batteries recharged because you're around all these talented people, and they talk about work and you talk about writing and stuff like that. And they just, they urge you on. It's cool. So if you get a chance to do one of those, go do it. And make sure you take
Oh,
lots
I
of
keep
books
looking
because
at
you'll
Comic
sell them.
Con. It's just
Oh, you
Ottawa's
have?
a 3-hour flight from here, and it's not
Yeah,
cheap. So
no,
there's a lot to go into it for sure.
yeah.
And then just
Well,
timing never works out.
it's one aspect, and then I said, but you know, you just got to keep pounding, man, and keep writing. You
Hmm.
know. Anyways,
For
James, I'm
sure.
going to have to wrap her up because the Zoom guys are going to kick her ass pretty soon. But I want to thank you for being
Yes.
on board today. Just
Well, thank you for having
this is
me.
what I do. I just do a impromptu conversation with people. I don't have a bunch of questions lined up, and I'm not going to ask you what inspires you, because I asked the last guy. But listen, it's great to have you on board, and I want to thank you. Now, can you tell people where to find your stuff?
I don't have an official website or anything yet, so everything's basically on Amazon. Just search my name on Amazon, the list comes up, and yeah, that's pretty much there for now.